I really want you to get into like why you started the Warriors on the Way and how people can get involved with it and go that direction. Unless James has got something in to ask real quick.
Yeah, no, I have a ton of questions, but I think it's all coming out if we just let Steve talk. So I think it's good to go ahead and let him talk about Warriors on the Way, and that's a good way to do it now.
Okay, Warriors on the Way got started as the kind of the answer to one of my purposes. One of my purposes was walking the Camino, so I would have time that I thought was going to be alone to simply walk and think and pray and try to discern a way a post-army life. And one of the traditions on the Camino is to leave a stone for what burdens you at the Cruz de Ferro. And so the thing that I had as what was troubling me was the casualties that we took, those that were killed in action while deployed. And at this point, I'm living nearby San Antonio. Fort Hood is not very far away. I deployed from Fort Hood. So I drove up to Fort Hood and went out to Range Road where we'd done all of our pre-deployment training and went around the mount sites and the gunnery ranges and everything. And I collected up stones for each of those that we were killed or we had killed, which by modern, excuse me, in comparison to historic warfare, casualty numbers in our modern wars are almost non-existent. But in comparison to other battalions who were deployed at the same time, my battalion took a lot of casualties. And so I collected up stones for each of them. And then I walked the Camino with the intent of leaving those at the Cruz de Ferro, not to say that I forgot them, but I just couldn't allow myself to be under the weight of those losses anymore. And as I walked away from the Cruz de Ferro, two different people asked me to pray for them. Don't know how they were motivated to do so. One was speaking German. I didn't have a clue what she was saying, but there was another German pilgrim there who interpreted for me. And so I provided her a prayer. And when I finished that, I thought I was just going to reach down and grab my rucksack and start walking. And there was a Spanish guy there who my Spanish is absolutely miserable. And it was even more miserable then, but I was able to figure out that he was asking for prayer as well. So I prayed for him. And when that was finished, his face was just glowing and he just bounded down the trail and never saw him again, never saw either one of them again. And I picked up my rucksack and walked off. And I realized, I said, that was a healing experience. That right there. I don't know what is going to happen, but I know that something massive has changed inside of me. And as I spent the next miles just turning it over in my mind, I said, other vets need a chance to have this opportunity. Veterans need to know that this opportunity exists. And then I thought, most won't go. You can tell them that it exists, but most won't go. What will make it possible? Got to know that it exists. You got to get just the word out, so to speak. And then the people are going to have to ask themselves, is it worth the money? Because they've gone to behavioral health on post, if they're still in, they've gone to the VA, they've gone to the various vet centers, and all that stuff is free or almost free. It's starting to slow down slightly now, but there for the longest time, there was a giant fire hose of money just being sprayed all over the veteran community. So you can have whatever you want almost free. Well, if they're going to have to pay for it, they're not going to go. That means we have to be able to sponsor people, right? And it's just one step after another in my mind as I'm walking. If we sponsor people, we need donations. If we need donations, we need donors. If we need donors, we need charity status. So I call up a friend of mine or I send him a text when I hit some Wi-Fi and he goes, I know how to set up a 501c3. I'll get that started. And then like, okay. And I've just come off an assignment at the Army Medical Center and School Center of Excellence at Fort Sam. And I've been teaching with absolute incredible professional colleague, now a dear friend, Dr. Lisa Landry, for years. We've been doing this side by side, behavioral health and faith. They complement each other. They don't conflict with each other. So as soon as I get home, I'm like, I'm going to have behavioral health on the team and I want Lisa on the team. And so I got home and I asked her and she's, yeah, I want to do it. And we just started sketching it out. What's it going to look like? Most Americans can get away for 2 weeks, but not much longer. Okay, we're going to do 2 weeks. We're going to start good classic Army standard. If it's going to be 2 weeks, you start in Santiago and you back up 2 weeks. You backward plan. Okay, 2 weeks, we can start in Astorga. Boom, Astorga is our start point. Then somewhere we're going to put the word out. We're going to figure out how to get the word out and tell everybody about it while we're getting all the pieces in place, rather than wait for the pieces to be in place. So we start pushing information out, still in the planning, still in the development. Somewhere in the process, Randy saw something, was in Italy at the time, contacted me, said, I saw this wherever you saw it, and how can I help? And I said, I don't have a clue how to get our lodging arranged while in the States, between time zone differences, language differences, and all this. And he goes, I can do that for you. I'll make you a spreadsheet of places. I'll contact everybody. I'll get everything set up. So we had our lodging arranged, because when I went the first time, we talk about behind a guidebook. When I went the first time, I didn't know what limonene was. I had no idea what a liminoid was or anything like that. I knew this. I knew that I wanted no plans. The only plan I had was get off the plane and start walking. That was it. I had no guidebook, no map, nothing. Just get off the plane and start walking.
Hey, Steve, that I did too, but is today's 5 years later, 6 years later, do you have to make reservations now after COVID?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's the big kicker. When I went that first time, I didn't care if I had a reservation, and I didn't even know reservations were possible until I got there. But I never made one, because if you're by yourself, you can find a bed, you can find a single bed. But I wasn't going to bring a dozen guys, show up in a tiny little village and say, okay, now let's find a dozen beds. It had to be arranged in advance. So Randy, you helped me with that. That was amazing. And we went and bought tickets and everything else. And I actually started that pilgrimage in the hole. We were in the red when we took off from San Antonio. And I just said to myself, either God is going to honor this effort, it's going to be successful, and the money's going to come in one way or another, or I'll just be paying off this credit card for the next 6 years. And we executed. And by the time we got back from Spain, enough donations had come in to cover the shortfall. And we've been running an iteration ever since. And every year we fine tune it a little bit. This Albury didn't work for one reason or another, and that's always been modified. We now have a pretty much perfectly set list. For the leadership, it's turnkey. The key is that we can provide that safety. We've got the safety release valve at our disposal, but the pilgrims get to come in and release control, knowing, or at least trying to facilitate them knowing, we can simply trust you to do this work for us. And the results is, since 2000, our first iteration, to 2023, most recent iteration that was conducted last September, October, is we have had people with, and we never give out individual results. I'm going to preface this real quick, and we never put anybody's name on anything. If the individual wants to tell you all about it, that's great. That's their choice, but we respect everybody's privacy. And that's for a variety of different reasons. But one of them, and I hate to say it, is brutally mercenary, is that if Joe is getting X% due to PTSD as VA compensation, and then at the end shows an 80% reduction in symptoms, and that information got back to that person's primary care manager, we put that person at risk of losing their compensation.
Which is a problem, James, because just because he showed favorable at the end of the Camino, where he's probably most at peace, when he goes back to his normal environment and goes back to the normal stress of the job and whatever, he may deteriorate. But if he gets out in this calm state and his benefits have been reduced, it's almost like an act of God to get him boosted up again.
Yeah. So we're here to help the vet. We're not here to hurt the vet. So we do everything as an aggregated total. We never put anybody's name on anything, so that there's no chance of cross-referencing information and tracking it back to a single veteran. We, as an average, our vets on pilgrimage experience a 70% reduction in symptoms from the start of the pilgrimage to the end of the pilgrimage. And that's using the PCL5, which is a peer-reviewed, validated test instrument used by the Army, or used across the DoD, used by the VA. It is the standard assessment tool for, other than like direct psychiatric or psychological interview, but it's a completely objective, validated test tool. So our results are legit science, right? And the differences are amazing. Now, like I said earlier, is the person allowing themselves to be in that liminoid, allowing themselves to be in that transition, or are they clinging to control? We've had 80% plus, and that's rare. We've had as low as, I think our lowest individual improvement was about 31 or 32%. Now, 30% is considered, 25% is considered a statistically significant improvement. Anything that's 30% or higher is directly attributable to whatever the treatment modality was being employed. So even our worst case improvement is still statistically significant and directly attributable to the treatment modality, which is going on this pilgrimage. And so even at the most base level, the work that's being accomplished, the improvement that's being accomplished is incredible. We have pilgrims that show up and they say, I actually don't think there's any hope for me, but the trip sounded cool. And they end going, okay, now I'm starting to remember what normal feels like. And they realize that getting help will help. And that's really what we want to see. We want to see enough of improvement that they know that there's overall daily life improvement potential. It exists. It's an option for them. And any emotional, mental, whatever you want to call them, barriers to care, them not wanting to go and seek additional help, have been, best case scenario, completely removed, or at least significantly mitigated, where they say, depending on what, going all the way back to early in our discussion, what is going to best meet their need, I really ought to plug into my local faith community, whatever that is. I really ought to be talking to behavioral health, being involved in one-on-one counseling or group sessions or whatever the case may be, because we've moved them far enough forward in their healing journey that to abide in their healing, for their healing to abide in them, they need to abide in their healing. They want to go home and start exploring those options that are available to them.
Let's talk about how someone can apply to go on the way, and then also a day in the life of what does the average day look like?
Okay, to apply, the website is warriorsontheway.org. That'll give you a good overview of our work. I have to admit, I have not updated it very recently. So don't worry about the fact that it doesn't talk about things that happened yesterday. It still has the good core information. Go there, take a look at it, send an email, real simple email, all spelled out, no spaces or anything, warriorsontheway@gmail.com, and ask for an application. Everybody that sends me an email, sends the organization an email, gets a stock form letter reply saying, this is what this pilgrimage looks like. You're not flying in, taking a bus, riding a taxi. We're going to walk every day. We're walking in the mountains every day. These are our sleeping conditions and all that. So do you still want, knowing that, do you still want an application? You reply to the form letter, and then we send the application materials. You fill it in, you return it with supporting documentation. You got to actually prove that you're a combat veteran. Our focus is on combat veterans, so you got to prove that. It's amazing how many applications that we get. And you look at it and you think, that's a really good application. So where's the supporting documentation? There isn't any. Now, the person is just trying to slip through. It happens. So we review everything, make sure the person qualifies. And then of all the applications that come in, we figure out who's going to go on the trip. And we do the first selection list and then a waiting list. Terminology you'll be familiar with. Know them out. Like, okay, this is our first replacement. This is our second replacement. This is our third replacement, depending, because the person may have applied in October, November, not going to leave until next September. And there's been a job change, a family change, whatever. So some people, unfortunately, get selected and then have to decline their opportunity to go. When that does happen, just for anybody listening, we automatically put that person on the list for the next year and give them a second opportunity. If they can't go the second year, then they've got to go back in the applicant. So you fill it out, you provide the supporting documentation, go through the selection process. We form the team, make the primary list, make the waiting list. Again, people who are on the waiting list are encouraged to come back for first consideration for the following year because they were technically selected. It's just we were trying to make a group dynamic based on who all applied. So they didn't necessarily fit with that particular group. And And then it goes from there. We move towards the timeline. We just started making notifications for this year. Yesterday, we got to hear back from a couple people as to are they accepting or declining so that we can move to our wait list. And then,
What does the nonprofit provide?
yeah, so what we do is we provide, everybody has to get themselves to San Antonio with a valid passport and the clothes they're going to hike in. We provide backpack, trekking pole, sleeping bag, canteen, wet weather top, the pilgrim credential. We do a pre-registration at the pilgrim office so that nobody waits in line. So we walk in and we just pick up our pre-filled in, no waiting compostelas, the big certificates. We provide the airfare. We provide the ground transportation in Spain. We provide all the meals, all the lodging. Basically, we provide everything other than your Cokes, your candies, and your souvenirs. All of that is covered by the donors.
Okay. And what's the day of the life look like?
So we get up every morning. We sleep in an albergue. We get up in the morning and
The hostel, basically.
yeah, pilgrim only hostel. We get up in the morning and we celebrate the mass. Attendance is required. Participation is not. Okay. And the reason why attendance is required is because in the process of the short mass that we conducted, very army in the field style, quick, the essentials. But during that is a short message on healing. It's like, this is your message for today. And so we want everybody to hear that. So whether you sit in the back and you're just watching, listening, or whether you're up front, fully participating, that's up to you. Just have to be present to hear that healing message. And then we start walking. Everybody starts moving. We'll stop an hour or two later to eat breakfast. And then
For mass?
was it
Why are you getting up for?
before sunrise in September? So it's like between 6 and 6:30. There's a couple days that are extra early. Extra early is the day we hike up Cruz de Ferro, because then we actually conduct the mass at the very top. So we're conducting the mass at the same time the sun is coming up. So that early morning nautical twilight. And the message of that day, we always tie the message to something unique to that day. The message for that day is, allow a new day to dawn in your life. Like, it's right as the dawn of a new day. Allow a new day to dawn in your life by leaving your burdens behind here. So get up 6:30, somewhere in there. We're walking no later than 7. Walk for an hour or two. We hit one of the cafes that's open for breakfast. Then if it's a short day, 12, 13 miles, we got a couple short days, then we'll just continue to walk to destination. If it's a longer day, 16, 17 miles, then we'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of noon break for a short snack. As you want to stay light while you're moving so that you don't get lethargic. And then we finish out, we make the last little bit to destination. Arrive in destination, I collect up all the credentials. I get everybody registered in the albergue while they're taking care of personal hygiene, washing clothes, sleeping, exploring the village, exploring the town, exploring the city, depending on where we happen to be. And then everybody reconvene at dinner. And that's when, okay, this morning we talked about allowing a new day to dawn in your life. As we walked, how did you interact with that message? What were you thinking about? How can you bring that lesson home with you so that there's that opportunity to actually embrace and embody the message? There's a doc by the name of Andrew Newberg, and he talks about how if you connect physical activity with what you're thinking about, there's a longer lasting impact of the thought rather than it being fleeting. In the advertising world, they call that being sticky. It stays with you. And so that's why the mass with the healing message is first thing. And then we immediately start walking. So that message ends up being step by step a part of who you are. While we're walking, myself and whichever doc, whether it's Dr. Landry, Dr. Phillips, or Dr. John Meyer, we will walk up and down our column. We don't say we have to be in a tight group. You got a dozen guys out there. And I say, guys, males, females together. We take male and female applicants. It's going to get strung out like any walking formation. It's going to get strung out. As long as we're close to line of sight with each other, that's fine. But we'll move forward. We'll walk up, walk a little bit faster, get to the guys in the front, talk to them, walk a little slower, talk to people in back. And we just float up and down the entire formation. striking conversations as they happen.
Got any questions, James? I got a two.
No, go ahead, Randy.
So have you got any support from the different military organizations have money, especially chaplains, right? Of I don't know if they can apply their money to this kind of thing, but has any military, active duty military money said, hey, I want to pay for 3 people from like 7th group to go to this or something like that? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is kind of and almost. The first year we went out, we had a couple long tab guys on that trip. Had no idea. And to be honest, I still don't have any idea how to raise significant amounts of money. I hate talking about money. It just totally grates against everything within me. So I don't know how to fundraise. I admit that up front. That is the weak link in this chain. But after that first iteration, I had a conversation almost immediately following by the person who at that time was the president of the Green Beret Foundation. And as you probably know, they are absolute grandmasters when it comes to soliciting donations. So they've got a ton of money. And the person who's president at that time told me, gave me his here's my personal cell phone number. He said, any future iteration that has a long tab guy on the trip, we will sponsor that. We'll just cut a check for that individual. And I said, great. And I just kept that in my back pocket as this like go-to. Unfortunately, this recent year had long tab guy on, had 2 originally apply. One of them had to drop out to some sort of timing conflict. But I called him up and said, hey, remember when? He goes, yeah, I remember when, but I'm not the president anymore. I can't make good on that promise, but here, talk to this guy. And it just fizzled. They didn't know me. We'd never seen each other face to face. So it just, that promise, it left office when the previous president left office. So that just is what it is. Chaplain side of the house, other specific part of your answer is the chaplaincy has official money and they've got unofficial money, right? So appropriated funds and non-appropriated funds. The non-appropriated funds within the chaplain corps is called the Chaplain Tithe and Offering Fund. And that's money that comes in the plate. And people will ask, like, well, if the Army is paying the chaplain and the Army is building the building and the Army is buying all the stuff, why do we take an offering? Well, it's for all the little extras, right? You want a piano player to play during the hymns? Chaplain Tithes and Offering Funds will pay that piano player stipend. You want to have a vacation Bible school for your kids? Chaplain Tithes and Offering Fund pays for that. Chaplain Tithes and Offering Fund also pays for things like retreats and all types of everything that's extra, right? Everything that's non-essential, because the appropriated funds pays for essentials, non-appropriated, Chaplain Tithes Offering, CTOF pays for non-essentials. And so individual chaplains who know about the program have in the past said, we want to, and you got to get, there's an approval process, but it's pretty simple. We want to designate next Sunday, whatever comes in the plate will go to this organization because they're doing direct soldier ministry or direct service member ministry. Depending on, we've got an Air Force, we've got an Army, CTOF checks to us. So that's happened. And we've gotten some good donations that way, but it's quite irregular because that's totally motivated by the individual chaplain in any given chapel service and agreement by whoever the garrison chaplain is. So you got to have at least 2 people on board to get that to happen. The local VFW, the VA that I'm a personal member of, has been quite generous in the past. And one of the VFW to a town to our north has given us a couple nice generous checks in the past. And then just this year, and this is the reason why we're able to do 2 iterations this year, another veteran organization, which is, now I just drew a blank. And I really want to give them credit. So maybe I can get you the name and you can put it in like the show notes or something. I got contacted by them, say, we like what you're doing. We give grants, but we only give grants if it expands the program. We're not funding what you normally do. You got to do something different, extra, whatever. And so we got a really nice donation from them, a $20,000 grant. And so we were able to schedule an additional iteration, a smaller iteration, because our typical operating budget runs between $45,000 and $50,000. So we were able to do an additional specialty iteration based on that grant, a special project that we have in the past said, we'd really like to accomplish this. if the money was there. And so that gave us the money to do it. But yeah, the vast majority of our funding comes from just great Americans all around the country saying, I can give $5, I can give $50, I can give $5,000. And we've literally gotten everything in between $5 all the way up to, I think our largest individual donation was $5. It might have been $5.50, but it was in the $5,000 window. And absolutely everything in between. I would say if you said what is the most common, it's somewhere like $75, $100 is the most common. If you think about it, it takes a lot of donations to come up with $45,000 when you're doing it $100 at a time.
And then just go to your website to donate if someone wants to do that.
That's correct. The website, there's a Support Us tab over to the upper right-hand side. You click that. There's multiple options there. You can do PayPal there. You can do a direct, enter your credit card number if you don't do PayPal, but you have a credit card that you use for your online money transfer stuff. There's actually a physical address for those who still write checks, which surprisingly is quite a few people. And then there's the almost cliche support the nonprofit of your choice card donation option too. And we've had a few people do that, which is interesting because we never get notified unless the individual person tells us. All of a sudden, Cars That Care, or whatever the name of it is, sends us a check saying so-and-so donated their car and here's your check. So all of those are options. And as once you get to the Camino, things are really affordable, right? So can you literally send $2, which would be €1.50 at today's rate of exchange, but you just bought some pilgrim a cup of coffee, right? Can you send
Probably $50 is all your meals and lodging for
yeah,
one.
it's up a little bit since you went. The last couple of years, inflation has hit every country in the world. So your daily expense is closer to 70, 75 right now, but still send $75 and you covered everything a pilgrim's going to need for a full day. So yeah, and working estimate, of course, everything varies a little bit. So this is a generous estimate, but we keep everything as close to the bone as we can. We don't waste anybody's money. We really take our fiduciary responsibility with people's donations seriously. With the rate of exchange, difference in airline prices, there's always a little bit of flex. But our working estimate for this year, based on last year's inflation rates, is $4,200 per pilgrim. $4,200 per pilgrim. That's round trip airfare, 16 days grand total, including the travel days on either end, all the lodging, all the meals, all the grand transportation, and everything they need to successfully complete the pilgrimage. I dare you to take a 16-day trip for $4,000. You're going to be hard pressed to do it. But we work closely with everybody. We've got great working relationships with all the places we stay, and we do not waste a penny. And so we make every single dollar that comes in. We wring $1.10 out of every dollar that comes in. It's bottom line.
That's excellent, Steve. I think it's when I wish I'd heard about it before I went. I don't know if I would have taken advantage of it because I went in May, which is a little bit less crowded and not as hot, but more rainy. We talked about that, but it really changed my life. And we talked about this on a different episode about how that happened. James, you got any additional questions for Steve?
Yeah, I don't want this to be too open-ended, but there's a little bit, for me, a clear message for anyone who might themselves be interested in participating. And that's good to get that message out. Also for people who are our listeners or viewers and aren't veterans and are just wondering, okay, what can I learn from this? Is there anything you can say without getting into a long sidebar, but nonetheless, what have you learned? What have people learned who go on this? Are there lessons you can offer up to listeners and watchers about, well, okay, this is the kind of thing that comes to you? I always despair as a professor myself on the side for the last 10 years and writing articles online now. Do people ever learn anything in class, or must they learn it experientially? I hold out hope that people can learn stuff, and that's why we do this podcast. We want people to hear and to learn. So anything that you think you could impart, maybe by way of potential lessons learned for you or for others that might come from this kind of experience that you might want to leave listeners.
Yeah. And it's something that if everybody try to be disciplined in my answer, because I like to talk a lot, and it's not quite true, but it's true enough. We all intuitively know it, that if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, right? You don't get stronger by sitting in a chair. You get stronger by doing push-ups or lifting weights or whatever, right? You don't learn mathematics by looking at the final tally. You learn mathematics by drilling the tables, right? Until you understand how it works. You never experience a change without experiencing a challenge to go with it. And I placed the process of transformation within that 3-part schematic of what pilgrimage is, or pattern of what pilgrimage is. Leaving a place in order to be in a new place where a process occurs for the sake of the purpose of whatever transformation. You don't have to isolate that willingness to be challenged to a pilgrimage environment. Allow yourself to enter moments of liminality, of unknown, wherever you are. And you do have to make the little safety caveat. There has to be some sort of safety net, right? But as long as you're stepping out with some form of natural left-right boundary, don't dictate where between those boundaries you're going to be. Allow some unknown to bring you where you never expected to be. Years and years ago, I read about 3M, and I don't even know if it's true at the time, but I read about it at least a couple decades ago, that 3M had a prize for whoever came up with the stupidest idea. And whether it was monthly or a couple times a year or whatever it was, but that's how innovation occurred. I'm not going to control what my design board says. I'm going to let my design board just speak to me. And as a result, 3M comes out with some really amazing products because they've got people who are really to just throw out an idea and see what happens. Be willing to work with the unknown. The actor Michael Caine said the best acting advice that he ever got was work with the conflict. And it was all about some piece of the scene, some piece of the set did not work properly. So in this early acting, like he's a brand new actor and he gets there and he's stuck. They have to stop filming, pull him off the set. What's wrong? He didn't know his lines. He didn't know anything. He was just completely stuck because this piece of the set wasn't where it was supposed to be. It wasn't doing, and that was what he was using as a cue. And so the director told him, work with the conflict. If it's a comedy, make a joke out of it. If it's a drama, make a tragedy out of it. But always work with the conflict. And you're going to come out ahead as a result. So allow yourself to be put in unknown situations where conflicts and challenges exist so that you can learn from them. So that you learn that, yes, you actually can overcome what's laid out ahead of you. Randy can tell this way better than I can because he was actually part of the instructional cadre there. But the Special Forces Assessment and Selection Program is a series of conflicts and challenges. And are you willing to live in and lean in to that challenge and conflict and learn how to overcome it? In which case, you've got great potential to be on a special forces team. Or are you going to allow that challenging conflict to just cause you to mentally shut down and say, oh, I can't do it because this is in my way? In which case, you need to go back to the regular Army where everything is governed by strict rules. And you're going to exceed there and excel there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's two totally different ways of being. And if you want to be out and doing what's more than ordinary, you want to be out there doing what's extraordinary and really excelling, learn how to allow for the unknown. And when conflict and challenge exist, lean into those conflicts and challenges and use the conflict.
I'd like to end on that, but I'd also like to military about the Camino, because majority of the people that listen to us aren't military, and just say there's so much that you can get out of being with yourself for 30 days and dealing with the conflict of the Camino, which every day is a new surprise in most cases, whether it's going to be a new blister or it's going to be all the ends full and you have to move on to the next village or something like that. And there were so many people I met that were trying to overcome things in their lives. And I like to think a lot of them managed to do that, or at least come to terms with what was going on with their lives by the end of their journey. I haven't heard anyone, except for one person, I haven't ever heard of anyone who went through the Camino and said that was a waste of my time. The person that I heard about, I read about in some kind of forum, and he was like a professional hiker. He'd hiked the Appalachian and everything in the United States and across the world. And all he did was gripe about how the Camino was worthless because I don't want to stop and get my passport stamped. It's ridiculous. They're not always open. And he wasn't open to the experience of the Camino, which is different than, hey, I'm going to hike every day and get to the end. And there's a really famous quote that I don't know who said it first, but every pilgrim says it, which you have to walk your own Camino. Some people don't finish, and that's all right. Some people get hurt and they have to take a taxi to the next stop so they can get better and then take a break for a couple of days. And they don't stay on their schedule, and that's okay too. Some military people who've been carrying backpacks their whole life put on the 15-pound backpack for the Camino, walk for a week, and they're exhausted and they're wondering this is me, for instance, and they're wondering why they're smoked and they have blisters and they never had blisters their whole life. And that's okay. You have to fix yourself and take care of yourself, but you just got to keep an open mind if you're going to do the Camino. So that's all. That's good.
It's funny you say that about carrying the backpack and being smoked. This last year, the guy that we had was 18 Echo, Special Forces communications guy for the people who don't know number system. And we're on, I don't know, day 9 or 10. And I walk up alongside him. I said, so how you doing? And he goes, it was an 18-pound rucksack compared to 65, 70, 75 pounds, right? That he's used to. And he says, everything above the waist, I feel amazing. Everything below the waist, I feel like I'm an SFAS again.
Yeah. So
walking every day is different. And,
yeah.
And it doesn't matter a light pack or a low pack. And people can walk a long distance. Almost everybody can walk a long distance. It's a totally different animal when you get up and you do it again the next day, and then you get up and do it the next day. So just in general advice for Camino people or people planning it, don't spend as much time worrying about training your distance as you have training your consistency, and walk every single day. Even if it's a shorter distance, even if you need to do shorter for time constraints, you're still better off every single day than really long on Saturdays only.
Yeah. No, hey, Steve, thanks for coming on and talking about this. I think it's hopefully you'll get the word out a little bit, word of mouth, that this is out there and that you guys are doing good stuff and helping the veterans get through this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Enjoyed being on, enjoyed the friendship that we created years ago, getting this program started, and the help that you gave getting us off to a good first year.
I didn't even realize that was your first year. I didn't realize it at the time, but good to know. James, you want to sign us off?
No, that was excellent. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for listening. We hope that this not only helps spread the word, but hopefully for people who are in a position to potentially go themselves, this gives you the motivation to go ahead, apply, reach out, get the help, embrace the unknown, and good luck everyone. Thanks.
Thanks everyone.
We'd love to hear what you think, so please comment on the show with your thoughts. We read all of your comments.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for subscribing. See you next time.